Hi, my name is Ian David Marsden. I'm a cartoonist, illustrator, and designer. You can see more of my work on marsdenillustration.com. In this little video demonstration, I'm going to draw a sketch, then I'm going to ink it, and finally I'm going to color it in Photoshop using watercolor brushes from kylebrushes.com. By the way, if you're hearing crickets, you're not hallucinating. I have my window open, and they're pretty loud. As I mentioned in this drawing demonstration, I'm going to do 3 phases of a cartoon illustration. I'm going to do a rough pencil, then the rough pencil I'm doing is in Photoshop. I am then going to import my sketch into Manga Studio EX4, where I'm going to ink it. And then I'm going to bring my inked artwork back into Photoshop, where I'm going to color it using watercolor brush presets that I've purchased from kylebrush.com. There are many different presets that you can get from that website. Personally, I find them to be really excellent. They give me a realistic look that makes it almost hard to tell that the artwork was created digitally. Speaking of working in a digital form, I do all of my drawing on a Wacom Cintiq 27 QHD, and I hope from the video you can see the amazing size of the display and also the clarity. It's 27 inches and it's quad HD with over 2000 pixels. It's truly excellent. Also, as you can see, there is virtually no lag at all, and I can just draw and erase and have a very natural feeling when I'm working, which I love. I do still sometimes work traditionally with dip pens and watercolor and pencils. So when I work in a digital workflow, I want to have the same capabilities at my disposal, which I find that I totally do have with these tools. This is also where these Kyle brushes come in. Of course, you can have your own presets, and I have my own presets as well. But these collections are truly excellent, and you would have to spend a lot of time fidgeting with the settings to get them to be just as amazing as these already are. So check them out. By the way, I'm not getting anything from kylebrush.com to plug their brushes. I'm just a fan and wanted to share with you what I'm using here. Likewise, I'm a fan of Wacom Cintiqs. So there you go. I like my job. Right. That was a sketch. Now I am importing that as a JPEG into Manga Studio. I like to work in Manga Studio for inking because it has fantastic inking brushes. I mean, it's made for comic art, and you can tell when you use the program. It has a couple of fun features, as you saw in the beginning. I can erase overlapping lines directly. So if 2 lines cross over, if I choose that setting, I can just simply flip the stylus around and erase the overlapping lines. Here too, I have my own settings on some of the brushes that are already pre-programmed in the software. This is actually a vector brush, which is an advantage for scaling purposes, of course. There I wasn't too happy with what's going on with the pipes, so I'm making a bit smaller. There we go. Quite happy with that. Now we'll get the pants going here. I want them to be sort of loose, comfortable looking. As you can see, the brush strokes here also in Manga Studio reflect the pressure that I'm putting on my stylus that is detected by the Cintiq. I used to work with Intuos tablets as well, and I found them to be excellent as well, but the advantage obviously with a pen display is that you can see the drawing right in front of you and the line goes exactly where you put the pen on the screen. Here now I'm going to ink the dog. As you can see, I didn't stick completely to my sketch. I added a little tongue and an open mouth. And I'm playing around with the feet here, though I think I'm going to stick with my sketch. And the tail. There we go. If I turn off the sketch, you can see the line art. There's my signature. Okay, now I've imported that back into Photoshop. And now I am looking at my brush presets, and I'm going to select a few watercolor settings to show you what these look like. Here, if I zoom in a little bit, you can see that it really looks like watercolor. And you can even see the paper texture. You can of course also set paper textures. The paint blends, and each brush is different, by the way. You need to experiment with these. I'm sort of randomly selecting a few here. But what I want to show you is that I can achieve the look that I would have for a magazine cartoon that I would have had even 20 years ago if I was doing this purely traditionally on paper with watercolor. Except, of course, watercolor is wet. You can't erase it. If you make a mistake, it's, I mean, there's a little bit you can do with whiteout or, you know, white poster paint, but it's not going to look that great. So you better get it right the first time. And as a digital watercolor, you can go in there, erase it, redo it, undo it, of course. Do it on layers. Change the blending modes. Just, you know, it's just quite spectacular. Especially because it really looks as good, I find, as the real thing. And scanning watercolor is always a problem because unless it's a really fantastic scan, you might lose a bit of your color. It might not exactly look in print the way you had it on your original. On the top right, you can see that I actually imported a painting of the Scottish Highlands, which I hope I don't get into trouble with. I'm not using the painting as such. I'm just picking up colors as an inspiration for our two wandering friends here who are wandering around, apparently in the Scottish Highlands. The little marker stone there saying pub 3 miles seems to indicate this as well. As you can see, I'm just using the color picker inside the little thumbnail there to pick up some of the colors. This isn't something I always do, but I might actually make a little thumbnail like that myself, just with some colors, before I start drawing. I do have personal preferences to certain color systems that I like. For example, you're rarely going to see a really, really bright green in any of my artwork if I can avoid it, because I find it's just distracting. I mean, unless I'm actually trying to achieve some kind of a point with chroma and, you know, a visual effect. Anyway, as you can see, the watercolor here actually covers up the other watercolor a little bit, so it's almost as if I had mixed in a little bit of white. Some of them blend, some of them don't. Now I'm going to use a very big brush. I'm just going to blend the sky a little bit there. I'm adding a bit of shading around the outside too. Very often for my magazine cartoons, I like it if the drawing sort of doesn't bleed over the edge of the page, but rather is contained in the painted area, such as I'm doing here as well. And as you can see, I'm just sort of filling in a little background here, just to give it a loose and friendly painted look. Some clouds, a little bit of a evening sunset mood. Or an early morning sunrise mood, but since it looks like they're heading for the pub, so probably more likely the evening. There, I'm starting to like the feel of this. I'm going to add a little more darkness, a little more shading. I'm doing this all on one layer, but if I wanted to really go into the very detailed coloring, you can do this on as many layers as you want, of course, and use different blending modes. You can, multiply them or color burn, color dodge, all of the wonderful features of Photoshop as well. The next thing now, what I'm going to do is I am going to use the pen tool to quickly select the outlines of the main characters, to block in a flat color, which I can then also use to create a mask to color them in. In this case, I'm going to lay down a flat white block, and then I'm going to paint over it. Because I have a painted background, it's not going to look good if the paint of the characters goes over the edges. Everything has to look natural, as if it's all within the same scene. Now you can see I filled in the white. I'm going to do the same with the dog. Just using the Bezier pen because it's the most accurate and fastest way to work. And then I command click the work path, which actually makes it a selection, and I'll just fill it on a separate layer. So the dog is white now too. That actually looks pretty good already. They're white, and depending on the style or the effect that you wanted to achieve, that could be something. But for the purpose of this demonstration, now I'm going to color them in as well. I'm also going to use a watercolor, although maybe a gouache could be nice here if we want to make the characters a bit stronger and make them sort of pop out. But I think for this one, a watercolor would be very nice. And again, I'm going to do everything on one layer. So even the slightly darker shading, I'm just going to go straight over my original paint here. On a more intricate illustration, where I have more time to spend, I would probably do that on separate layers. Here I've decided to give him sort of Scottish red hair to go with his Scottish or Irish sweater that he's wearing. By the way, a personal favorite of mine. Sort of Iran sweaters. Again, watercolor, and you can see how it's just blending. I go over it again a little bit darker, and it creates these, watercolor blends that are really excellent. Then we're going to give his little scarf some color, the shoes, or the boots. I'm keeping everything somewhat in the pastel range also because it is watercolor, and because it's a personal preference of mine. Especially in painted things, I don't like to go too bright. Now in vector artwork, sometimes I like to use extremely bright and even clashing colors. the dog, make him a little bit splotchy. Maybe add a little bit of brown. Again, I don't want to spend too much time so this video doesn't get too long. I think you're getting the general idea. Give his tongue a little bit of pink. And there you go, you have a little bit of an idea of how this could look. And if you saw this in a magazine or a newspaper, you might not even think immediately that this was done 100% digitally on a display in Photoshop and Manga Studio. Now I'm just going to lay down a little bit of shading for the shadows. These are the shadows on a separate layer, and I'm multiplying it to give a little more depth. And that's only the paint. Here you can see the beautiful painted detail. There are the shadows. There's the line art. Sometimes if you lighten the line art a little bit, it makes it look more natural as well. So I'm taking it down a little bit. It's not 100%. I hope you enjoyed this little drawing demonstration. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. I'll try to answer them as well and as quickly as I possibly can. Also, I have a Facebook page, an artist page for Ian David Marsden, and an Instagram where I frequently upload sketches and projects I'm working on. Hope to see you again soon in my next video. Thanks for watching.